Welcome to YouMeWe Amplified Podcast, where we have conversations with social impact leaders addressing the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. These leaders are transforming where we live and work with sustainable social solutions. Hello, I'm Suzanne F. Stevens, the Wavemaker at YouMeWe Social Impact Group. I'm an international speaker, author, community builder, and a multi-award winning social entrepreneur. And yes, you guessed it, your host for YouMeWe Amplified Podcast. Today, we are having a conversation with Jennifer Buchanan, founder of JB Music Therapy. JB Music Therapy significantly enhances the quality of life for individuals across diverse settings, including hospitals, schools, and community programs. JB Musical Therapy fosters emotional well-being, and we need a lot of that right now, cognitive stimulation, and social connection by providing specialized music therapy services. All the way from Alberta, Canada, please welcome Jennifer Buchanan.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Great to have you. And I don't think I've had the honor of interviewing somebody in the last couple of years who's been in business for 33 years. So we're going to dive into that in a little bit because longevity is a tough game as an entrepreneur. So kudos to you.
Thank you.
Now, going back 33 years, I'm sure you remember when.
Yeah.
What was the catalyst for you starting JB Music Therapy?
Wow. Yeah, you're right. First of all, just even bringing up the longevity of it. And I know we're going to go there because I've really been feeling it the last 3 years in our particular. And so reflecting on the past has been really important because it does remind us, why are we doing this? And realigning with that original mission that really hasn't changed that much. When I graduated from university with my music therapy degree, there were no jobs. It's not like they were advertising music therapists. I was number 133 in Canada. Anything that was available was already taken, but the need was so strong. We had community where people are still having strokes, people have dementia. This was before the MRI machine, so we hadn't really even seen the benefits of music at the neuroscience level, but we were certainly witnessing it in that anecdotal way where you would go to the bedside of someone in a hospital or a care center, and you would see someone who otherwise couldn't speak begin to speak. Someone who was having a hard time walking improve their gait. Someone who was feeling massively depressed and not motivated to move forward in their life, all of a sudden feeling like they had a lifeline and being able to share that. So we knew this music thing had a bigger role than entertainment or something to learn at home or to share with friends, which is also important. But it had this greater piece to helping people with their health, their recovery, their learning, as well as their personal wellness. And so where I started was school, seeing a granddad who wasn't able to walk or talk, all of a sudden crying, singing, listening in a whole new way while he was in the hospital for the remainder of his life in that case. And then seeing some of the little humans that I got to meet along the way where they were having such a hard time learning and learning new concepts, and music was able to really help them. The beginnings were broad, from the littles all the ways to the elders. And it began from there. And why 33 years? Because I'm still learning a whole bunch of stuff. And there's still so much more to do. And the science now is catching up to what we saw anecdotally. So it's exciting to be able to get that quantifiable data coming right at us at this time. It's a great time to be around music and health.
So let's talk about the littles, as you mentioned. How does this assist with them learning
Yeah.
music?
So we talk a lot around how kids have different learning needs. And we know some kids go in and the whole curriculum and the way school is structured just makes sense. And so they're able to succeed and feel connected to their peers and feel connected to the curriculum. But we know now that's just not the case for a lot of kids who are dealing with their own anxieties or maybe different ways that they learn. And so one of the best things that I feel music therapists are doing on the ground is reinforcing the strengths of those young kids, whatever that may be. And so that could be where if they're having a hard time reading, and we remember learning the ABCs, it would have been really hard to remember all the ABCs if the song didn't go with it. That's exactly how this works. What sort of music can we bring in to help with the reading, to help with the learning? But it's also at a very basic level, too. Some of us feel a bit wobbly. Maybe our balance isn't quite the same as other kids, or maybe we don't have that strong sense of rhythm and connection to our own bodies. Going through certain music exercises with a music therapist begins to entrain us into that very specific rhythm. Of course, as music therapists, we're often invited to work with our students that have specialized learning challenges, learning needs. And that has had so many iterations over the course of my career, from cognitive disabilities to special needs to exceptional needs. There's been so much terms over the last 3 decades, but ultimately, it's working with that kid so they can feel the most successful that they could feel. And there's so many different ways to write a song, hence writing some poetry. There's so many different ways to make music, verbally or not verbally. There's so many different ways to feel connected to your peer group through music, even if you are the perceived different one. All of a sudden, you're all the same. So it's an incredibly equitable experience, this music that can bring kids together.
I love everything you just said. And I just had the strangest experience as you were speaking, Jennifer,
Mm,
thinking when you related it to the ABCs.
mm.
Now, I cannot sing. I was Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz, I will say, in grade 7,
So good.
and I did sing. I shouldn't have, but I did.
Good for you.
That being said, I was challenged when I was a
Mm,
kid learning,
mm.
and I do, though, know how to dance. Like, I
Oh,
have good beat,
mm,
and it just occurred to me
mm.
that maybe music would have made learning easier for me. Now, I'm not an extreme case, I know, but just because I do love drums, I do love beat.
Right?
I just thought, I wonder if that would have helped me.
Yes, and I think where the music therapist, so the human relationship piece, which is at the essence where therapy is at, is having this relationship with someone else. That person then would bring this hidden gem of a resource that you hadn't thought about in that particular way, or the teacher hadn't thought about it, the parent or the child hadn't experienced it in that way, to give that unique opportunity to go, how about this?
So let's talk about,
Mm,
in particularly mental health challenges,
yeah.
because as we know, this
Mhm.
is so huge among youth. How does music therapy help people with mental health? And where do you find those individuals so that you can help?
Very good. This is, again, a huge domain. So I'm going to come at this one from some recent experiences, um, because people are feeling locked up. So they know something isn't feeling quite right, but they're having a hard time expressing it. And we've all felt that at a certain time. Youth going through difficult times, it's not that the feelings aren't there. The feelings are incredibly strong, but they can clutter the word sharing of what all those feelings are. And again, I'm sure we can all feel that at some level. So, what happens when we start unraveling the feelings through music? This could be as simple as asking a question: what music have you been drawn to lately? Which sounds just so incredibly simple. When we begin to delve into that and say, anyone who's listening to the podcast right now, think about the music you've been drawn to lately, because it is quite interesting. I didn't ask you why, I just asked what it was. And you can start having that music play through your mind. There might be certain qualities to that music. It might have qualities of being comforting. It could be incredibly energetic. It might feel really nostalgic. So you're going to start thinking about all the music you listen to and then put 3 adjectives, 3 descriptive words to that, just for fun. Some of my youth may say relaxing, soothing, calming. They might be very similar there. Some might say really creative, quirky, and something else. So, whatever those 3 words are, and then where the therapy comes in is because we know through science that music is so deeply personal, and what you're drawn to and what you are calling to you, not what's just showing up at the mall, but what you're actually taking moments to go out and find and fuel yourself with that music, so incredibly personal. Is it possible that those 3 words used to describe your music also describe you? Is it possible? And that's the beginning of the conversation. Because if that's not true, is it what you aspire to be? And if that's not true, is it something that we need to dig a little deeper about because it's coming from somewhere? And how connected it is to you personally, or perhaps you're not feeling connected to yourself at all. So, this would be the beginning of that conversation as just one intervention of what we can do with music to find out more about that youth. Through this all, because we're talking about something that so many of us have a connection to and already have a relationship to, it means they can have a relationship with me a little bit quicker than maybe other people, because now we're connecting on music. And hopefully, over our next 3, 4, 6, 12 sessions that we have together, exploring music, but also exploring exactly who they are and what their aspirations are and where they want to go, and putting together music and improvising together and having a couple of drums. And like you're saying, maybe even moving around the room, we can explore ourselves and our possibilities in a whole new way. We can do it through the music.
I'm dying a little bit in here because I came up with one of my 3 words was easy. Meaning I don't select my own music. Whatever shows up in my life,
Yes.
although I know what I'd like, but I just don't take the time. So I'm like, easy, that's my aspiration. Either I'm easy or I want to be easy.
Right? And ease in life is a real thing, especially when you're a busy professional and we're trying to run these businesses that we're doing. We want it to be easily assimilated and to have an effect really quick. It's so entrepreneurial.
I'm glad that's the way you took it. Uh, now I understand the therapy. You're using music, but you're also playing music. And does that person need to know how to play music?
No.
Or are you teaching them?
Yeah,
Okay.
there is absolutely no, you don't even have to have lots of music background for this to be effective. It is just one of the components of being human. There's no place in the world where music doesn't exist. Everywhere that society is at one point was the first beating drum and the first harmony and the first bone flute, like all around the world. We all started here. It's in our DNA. And because of the way that it draws out our creativity, our warmth, and our kindness, and all those things that music can do, as well as feeling like incredibly connected to other human beings, it's just so human. And so I feel that by using it, we're able to accomplish this like through nonverbal therapy is what we're essentially doing, but it's music therapy. We're able to tap into those parts. When I was saying drawing out the strengths of people, it's drawing out their creativity, it's drawing out their warmth and their kindness, but also that they can feel whole in some way. Another population group that we work with is very acute medical. So we'll be working with stroke and brain injury. We're on the burns unit where someone has been significantly burned, and ICU. So we're in highly medical units. And in those units, their lives have transformed quickly into something they weren't expecting. And that's a shock to our entire nervous system, to who we are. Being and living in a hospital for some people for months. If you've ever visited someone in the hospital over 3 days, feels like 3 months. So imagine being there for 3 months or 3 years in some cases, or having to go back repeatedly for treatments. Being able to maintain your level of motivation and sense of self is often difficult. Music therapists are called in frequently as an adjunct to all the other allied health, working with physios, OTs, and speech language. One of the roles we tend to have is on the motivation side because someone doesn't want to go to physio or OT or do speech. And so we can get them back to feeling strong, emotionally strong very quickly. Sure, we can also get them to move their bodies and to play a drum and to work on the affected side that the stroke has caused. Like we do that as well. But there's music naturally seems to really release this level of motivation for people. And that's just helping them to continue with this bigger program that we need in order for us to fully recover so we can get back to our best lives in this new way that we didn't know ourselves. Um, and music reminds these people, whoever they will be, who they are at their core. And that part never changed. This physical thing that has happened to you, this car accident, this stroke, this burn, has nothing to do with who you are as a person. And music reminds them of that. Nothing is actually more efficient or effective to remind them of that than that music that matters to them the most.
I already mentioned I do like the bongos.
Yeah.
I wanted to learn how to play them. I need to find somewhere where I can just go out in a drumming circle, just feel that sort of heartbeat.
Yeah.
And
We know scientifically it releases all the hormones we need to feel better. It's going to release more dopamine, more oxytocin, so we feel connected. It's going to release serotonin, so our mood's more regulated and decrease our cortisol. We also know that it's going to add more oxygen to the brain when we're dancing, when we're singing, when we're playing, because it's exercise.
Mhm.
And then what that leads into is when we're going into something like painting, all those hormones, neurotransmitters, all the things that we have just now given a boost to immediately apply to that creativity, that humanness, that warmth, that focus, all the things required to do that other activity. So, yes, we can enter into music and just focus on that. But just like the person then having to go to physio, it can also be a springboard into that other thing that you really want and dream to do. It can be a sure friend accompanying you along the way, your personal soundtrack.
There are two other groups I do want to mention,
Mm,
and one of them is the elderly.
mm,
And
yeah.
with our aging population, is there opportunity for group therapy? I believe you do some group therapy, do you not?
Mhm.
Are you finding that group therapy for elderly, is there a draw to that, number one? And what benefits beyond what you've talked about with other groups that they may appreciate? Or is there anything different?
Recently had the opportunity to speak to the Minister of Mental Health. We were also talking about the mental health and well-being of elders. When we talk mental health, we're often speaking adults, youth, and kids. Once people are in long-term care or continuing care settings, everything's just so jumbled up and we're not necessarily focused on that mental health and well-being. And I was mentioning to him, what if there was a mechanism where someone could go in with the skills required to play music in a certain way, the right music at the right time in the right way, and people within this continuing care setting who typically would have their heads back and their mouths open, or they're lying in bed and the TV was just blaring and they couldn't turn it off because they didn't have the capacity to do that themselves. What if all of a sudden all those people were in a circle and music was being made? They're lifted up and several were singing every word, even those who normally scream, every word. And then there's others that are just listening, and now instead of their head back and their mouth open, they just have their eyes lightly closed as they're listening. What would happen if we had a therapy that was able to do that for a full 45 minutes of engagement where nothing in this community engaged 8 people for 45 minutes? But not only that, the staff, the frontline staff who are working so hard and feeling burned out and absolutely exhausted, what would happen if all of a sudden they had a feeling of lift because of this incredible mechanism and this way that this music was happening? And they were able to do a little more whistle while they work. And then what would happen if the evidence showed that those effects that happened in that 45 minutes could last another 20 minutes, even after it stopped, and sometimes up to an hour or two afterwards? What would happen if we had something like that that would cost a fraction of the price of any pharmaceutical for all those 8 people in that group, that would help with any of the burnout percentages for the others? What would happen if we just had that every day, every 3 hours at all our continuing care sites? How much money would we be able to save? And I saw one stat that in the States, they think it could save something like $6.3 billion.
So, what did the minister say to that?
Right? He said, that is probably one of the most innovative things I have ever heard. Now, to be fair, I've sent him a follow-up email and have not heard back. I'm not calling out his name right now, but I plan to send another email. In the United States, they have it a part of it's called the old age pensioners policy. So music therapy has to be in every long-term care in the United States. We don't have anything like that. I feel we're denying them of something that can do exactly what you just said: bring people together in community, in small groups, and then offer these incredible, outstanding effects. I could almost cry right now because I've got all of these people in my head, and it's aging sucks, and continuing care, no matter how good, pretty we make a place or how much we put beautiful paintings on a wall, it sucks. And it's awful being away from home. And your family's not visiting you every day. I'm telling you that. It is really lonely. So if we know that music can reduce isolation and can help with the loneliness and bring people together and help us with our neurotransmitters and hormones and help us feel stronger than we ever have and remind us that we're a human being amongst this moment where the world doesn't see us quite that way anymore. Yeah, that's what I want to do. Anyways, thank you for letting me say all that.
I am so glad I asked the question because that's incredible. That's an incredible initiative. And whatever I can do, people need to be aware of that. And you articulated it so well during this podcast that I think it's a really important message that, like, I've got shivers from my toes to my head and they're just going up and down because it's so powerful what you were saying. And I know quite a bit about the science, sensitivity, and I focus on contribution to society and how that gets all the neurons going happy and crazy. And I can understand that with music, which kind of leads to an area that you suggested at the beginning inclusion.
Hmm.
And I listen to live music all the time. I love it.
that.
It's my happy time.
Yeah.
Beer, live music, and if I
Best.
can get up and dance,
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
am in
Yeah.
utopia.
Whiskey for me, Suzanne.
Have you done much exploration, or have music therapists done much exploration in inclusive environments?
Yeah, there's so many ways to look at what is inclusion, right? But I immediately go generational for me because I feel one of the connectors that will benefit all of society are the young and the elders connecting and learning from one another. The kids and the grandkids are coming to visit somebody, or your parent or your grandparent are coming to visit you while you're in the hospital. This opportunity of having an inclusive experience that otherwise can feel really awkward. Visiting people in these settings is really awkward. And palliative care is another area. So the person's dying and families coming to visit. Nobody knows what to say to the person who is dying. It's amazing how making live music, which sounds, really, you do that? Really, we do that. Live music in the palliative care room with the grandchildren, the children, the person who is in an active state of going to the other side and making music together has been an incredibly powerful tool to create those inclusive memories that now different generations are going to remember. And for the little guys, it gives a positive memory with that grandparent, even at the end stage, when that end stage is very scary for a little person to see. So I just immediately went there when you were talking about an inclusive experience, because those are extreme scenarios.
I love it and I understand it.
Yeah.
And I recently had a personal experience with it.
Wow.
My mother invited me to go to a 50s and 60s music event last Thursday. Now, I'm not going to lie, I was not excited. When she invited me, she started into, Suzanne, I thought maybe you would enjoy learning about me and what I like. And I was, Mom, stop. I didn't say no.
Right.
I just paused.
But you also didn't run out and get a poodle skirt.
I know, I didn't want it. But I said, no, I'll go with you, because it was a bit of a
Yeah.
drive to get there too, and back and stuff. And I said, I will go with you. She goes, oh, I'm buying the tickets. I said, oh, yes, you are. I'm not going for 50s and 60s.
Oh.
However, when we went, it was fantastic. And my husband said to me, the 60s, Led Zeppelin played. I wonder if they'd have them. I said, I doubt they'll have Led Zeppelin play. Sure enough, they did. They had everything from through the 50s and the 60s. And the talent was extraordinary. But I knew every single song except one. And my mother knew every single song except one, and that happened to be Led Zeppelin's. But after she said, did you like it? I said, Mom, I loved it. I had so much fun. And just spending time on music that she cared about, that were her childhood favorites. My mom can't sing either, by the way. Bopping along, singing away. It gave me joy just to watch her, because I know if she did that with my deceased father, he would have told her, stop singing.
Yeah.
Now my mother would have told him to shut up. We find our voice in time, right? But the point being, just those moments of appreciating a woman that's 80, I better get this right, just in case she listens, 83. I appreciate what you're saying too. That would be so powerful.
Yeah.
Next generations.
Yeah. I'm going to, just a couple of little things to
Please.
your story as well. I know that we're saying, oh, I don't sing or I can't sing. And again, if we go back into our DNA, it really was only about 550 years ago we separated the performers on a stage and an audience. Up till then, it really was all community music making. A lot of it is we're just not practiced. We're not doing it enough because we're leaving it up to performers. So I like encouraging people that I get it. When you just don't feel strong singing, I have to say I've taken summers off not singing. I go back to it in the fall and I'm not as good as I was prior to the summer. There is some muscle memory in regards to just doing it a little more. And I like to encourage people to do that. But this concept of bringing together generations, you, you may never fully realize the gift you gave your mom. She may not be able to express the depth of that to you. I'm sure she said thank you and all that, but I am certain at 83 that will probably go down as one of the greatest visits of her life with you that she loved. And now she will remember that. And it's really powerful. We can't underestimate how much that music anchors a moment in a way
I
that
love
no other, just like the reason we remember Led Zeppelin is because we remember the basement that we were at, the rumpus room is what we called it, and the velour couch. I can remember it at my friend Jeanette Kane's house with the vinyl next to us playing. And there was a shuffleboard there that occasionally we'd get up and play. I can smell that rumpus room. And so, how it can anchor those memories now, it's just how can we leverage that power into providing new ways for us to develop ourselves and our own wellness and our own well-being, be it feeling more included, connected, mentally well, overall healthy, regardless of where we are at whatever stage of life we're in.
Thank you for that. I'll admit, when I did go to Led Zeppelin concert, I don't like Led Zeppelin. Uh, I fell asleep.
Oh, God. It's
I
okay. They're good for that.
and that was the moment my husband will never forget.
Okay, that is so fun. I know someone who fell asleep during Billy Idol. It depends on what your thing is.
It's not my thing. Can somebody go to their general practitioner or physician and ask to be prescribed music therapy?
Okay, so this is when I'm talking about my dreams before I die speech. One is that music therapy becomes socially prescribed. I definitely want that. My own doctor has stacks of my books when I give them to her because I want her to pass them out to people. I want her to be talking about putting together a playlist to match the mood that you're needing, that you are hoping to have. So I want more doctors to be doing those sorts of things. We're in the very beginning stages right now of putting together a workflow app on using music. It's not just listening to playlists. It's not like deciding what mood you want off Spotify and exploring that way, but it's actually taking you through a workflow where there's a little mini assessment identifying exactly what you're needing and then helping you determine the music you need for that moment. And as we develop that, I want entire health authorities to be promoting how useful tools like that can be. We're doing research right now at the Foothills Medical Center using an app out of France that's an induction for people who are in pain or facing extreme anxiety. So it starts you at a certain beat per minute and it brings you down, and then it has an awakening. And of the 1,000 people we've researched to date, it is showing a 35% decrease in pain and anxiety in patients that are in the hospital. So, yes, social prescriptions for all. That's exactly what I want to happen.
Well, you've accomplished so much in these 33 years, but I know you're at a pivotal place in
Yeah.
your business right now. Tell us what you're going to do differently and why.
Even though my company's so old, or it feels like when we say 33 years, it's feeling so old, but I feel we've just left adolescence. Like it took us a long time to get here because we've been trailblazing a profession. We've been a part of the trailblazing team across Canada that is getting this profession out there. And it's just taken a long time to do that piece, but we're close now to move into adulthood. I also joke. So I said I was 55. I also joke that I think I now get like, what is it, 15% off at the drugstores. Like, I think that's where we are at,
That's where I'm going after this.
right? 15% off. So I'm recognizing all these things coming together. I also recognize that I can get tired. And I feel that wheel of, oh my gosh, we've done this before. I want to make a giant leap, whereas we've made half a step towards something. But over these last 5 years, COVID was not bad for me. It was terrible for my clients. But COVID was not terrible for me to have a moment and take time to reflect on my entire business. So, yes, we offer music therapy. We also do online group programs to reach rural and national people that can't access music therapy. We also do presentations and training. We work with frontline staff, but we also work with corporate in order to how can they maximize using music for things like focus and productivity. But we never had the time to really dig into all those things and what's the next elevated piece we can offer as a company. And like probably most of the people you interview say, it's this moment where you find the right partners. It's the moment when you've got the right who's. I just got goosebumps because I spent probably the first 20 years of my career thinking I had to do it by myself because if I asked for too much help, then I'm asking for help and I don't want to be a burden. I need to figure it out on myself. And I went and I got my MBA in social entrepreneurship so I could start using the language and start speaking the speak. And all that was wonderful. And I learned a lot. But until I really saturated myself with the right who's, nothing was really going to move. I've been very fortunate to now partner with people that want to fund music therapy, and they have started very specific funds to help us move forward in our initiative. Here in Calgary, there is the National Music Center, which, if you're ever in town, please come. And I want to take you on a tour of this architecturally magnificent design that is so beautiful aesthetically. And one of their exhibits is music and wellness, where music therapy is featured in this entire exhibit at the National Music Center. And so they're sharing the word in their way. Now there's funding to help for us to consult so we can help grow music therapy in other provinces where there just hasn't been as strong of a music therapy presence because we've been very privileged with all their support. So now we're helping garner more support for others in their communities and areas. Where we're going now, more growth, more access for these littles and elders that we're talking about, more working with partners, and more helping that there's stories left behind and evidence where people are using music 5, 10, 15% more intentionally every day and feeling better because of it.
Now, with some of those relationships that you've established, we need the whys to get to the who's.
Totally.
And the who's to the hows,
Right.
right? And did one of those individuals give you connection with the minister, or how did you get that?
Yeah. Yes,
Okay.
that's exactly how this works. Like, me just, right. Thank you. And it wasn't even a direct who. It was a who to a who to a who. And then you're there, but you're all connected at the end of it. Recognizing that there's only so much I can do internally going outward. It's about letting the world come into you as well and what you're providing. I used to feel different where I thought, oh, if someone's helping me, it means somehow I just didn't do a good enough job or I missed that part. You missed that part because you were doing 57 other things. And that wasn't the part you had to remember. That's why this person's in your life. And I'm like, oh, that's how this works. I love collabing.
I'm a huge advocate of collaboration,
Yeah.
but I'm also a realist. And I would say that your 20 years of trailblazing an industry that really barely existed gave you the cachet
Mm,
for people to want to collaborate with.
thank you.
It's very difficult, in my experience, to ask people to collaborate when they don't feel you either have enough to offer
Mm,
or you can't serve them. So, as much as collaboration appears to be a we, it does still start with me. And
yeah.
that seems to be my
Mm,
experience personally, as well as in chatting with the hundreds of interviews I've done. So, you needed those 20 years, unfortunately, to take
well, I
place at the
appreciate
right
that.
time with the right message.
Feeling it
Yeah.
right now.
So, one of the things that we had talked offline about, and I wanted to bring it into our interview, is contribute
Mm,
to financially or through free services or some way to a social initiative, in addition to actually
yeah.
having a social
Yeah.
enterprise, which is often very common, by the way,
Yeah.
which is,
Yeah.
what I do too. I have my social initiative that's part of my
Yeah.
business, but then I also contribute to my foundation over here.
Yes.
Can you share what you're thinking about doing and why
Yeah.
now that's important?
And this was so interesting because, again, I am sure so many people listening right now can relate to this. When you are pioneering, trailblazing, doing these things, we also do a lot of volunteer along the way. And we also do a lot of contribution, a lot. And we sit on boards and we learn things. And I was no different. So I was reading a particular book that I hadn't read for 3 years. So I was really into this book because it was like, oh my gosh, reading. I forgot how much I enjoy that. And so I was reading this book, and one of the areas it was talking about was just how important it is to include within your planning the contribution piece. And I've always known that. And when we're talking about social enterprise, we know that it is like our triple bottom line, like contributing is really important. But
People, planet, profit for our audience. So that's
exactly.
important.
And so when I was reading this, I went, oh, I don't want to do that anymore. That was my first reaction. I don't need to contribute. I've been contributing for over 3 decades. I've done my part. And I can remember thinking that. And so I finished reading the book. And then over the next 5 months, it bugged me. It bugged me that I felt that way, but I couldn't find a way to feel different. You're going to make me cry, because then I had a moment where you know how pictures show up on your phone like past memories? So I had a past memory, and it was an old photo that I had actually put into my phone, which was me in university, pre-computer, pre all those things. And I can remember I couldn't afford living close to the university that had the music therapy program. So I had to commute up to 2 hours a day just to get there. And because it was in Vancouver, the road was so slow and you were always in traffic. So you could study at the same time. You could have your book out on the dash and study and go to school, 2 hours. And I can remember by the time I got to school, I was exhausted. And I had to then drive home, and then I had to work many nights because I couldn't afford school. I was having a hard time affording school. And I can remember I was in the music therapy program, and you have to understand that I own a very large private practice of music therapists. I've been president of our national org twice. I was the inaugural executive director of our national org, in addition to running my business. So I have done things within my domain. But during that time, I was called into the teacher's office, and I can remember they suggested that I resign from the program. See, I could cry because I just didn't seem as invested in it. And it had nothing to do with that. It's because I had to commute 2 hours. I had to work. I couldn't afford proper nutrition. I never had time to exercise. I really struggled affording school. I had a single mom. She had done 3 jobs. I had to get some loans. They were at 14% interest, 13 and a half or something. All this to say, I had that flashback in a moment looking at that photo of us, our young person. Remember our little young people? I realized that now I have an opportunity to give back there. So we are creating this year so I can adhere to my contribution still because it was bugging me. I couldn't figure out something. And we're going to come up with a bursary scholarship for fourth year students in one of the music therapy programs. We're just putting together the details right now. And what's really exciting, I'm not going to do it by myself. This is going to be a team approach. I've got the most beautiful team from people who are interning with us right now, who are fresh out of university and interning all the way to being with the company for 25 and a half years. So we're all going to get together and figure out something beautiful, and we're going to implement it for this coming spring. So it's going to happen very quickly.
That's fabulous. I'm very happy to hear that. And because we're running out of time, I'm going to go to rapid fire, but I do want to just add in regards to that when you're talking about the book, because my book talks a lot about how to contribute as an entrepreneur as well. If you want to attract, retain your employees and get them inspired to contribute to something bigger than themselves, they're feeling purpose beyond the purpose of their work. Even though we think what you're like, not we, collective we, but you are doing something pretty profound. And I'm not suggesting this, but sometimes there's doctors that do something pretty profound, but they're just doctors that are checking in and out. Teachers, same thing, because they're not connected to what it pays them well and their livelihood. But when you contribute to something else, everybody can get involved in. It also makes them feel part of not only your organization's doing something bigger, but also you're going that extra step to empower. And it's the perfect one for you, by the way, I think, because therapists are there now.
Yeah, so we're about 10 times that size. So we're at about 1,200, but we need so many more if we're going to be fulfilling the mission of in every continuing care site in all of Canada.
Exactly what I was going to say. You're going to need more.
We need
when the
more.
minister gets back to you and says, Jennifer, let's do this.
All right, I'm ready.
Now, these are really about for the audience to get to know you a little better, okay? So what do you think is the most significant thing citizens can do to uplift people with mental health challenges or neurological conditions or development disorders? One thing citizens can do.
Say hello to somebody.
Love it. What is one thing you wish you knew prior to engaging down this contribution path?
I was able to capture that picture a little bit sooner. That's all it was. I just wanted to see that picture of myself. I went there immediately because that's what I want, is to remind ourselves, reflect back on our lives of something just so personal, and that maybe now you can help there. I wish I was reminded of that sooner.
What is the worst piece of advice you've ever received?
I can remember her standing beside me in choir, and she said, "You're too loud, stop singing." I've showed her.
What is the best piece of advice you ever received?
Absolutely, from my mom, which is never quit something when you're feeling in a low. Build yourself up first, and then you're allowed to quit. But you have to quit when you're feeling better and up on a high. End on a high note, she would say.
What is one piece of advice you would give to an entrepreneur who wants to have a social impact?
I would say figure out what your Venn diagram is. Mine is rooted on something called a bliss point, which is looking at health, mastery, and heart. And so I've got my Venn diagram. Figure out what yours is, that are all the pieces required, and give yourself a quick audit as to which area do you need to level up a bit, because I guarantee you need all three. So mine's heart, health, and mastery. Yeah.
If you had a daughter, you
do. I've got a son and a daughter, but I hardly can wait to answer this question because she's the coolest person.
So how old is she today?
She is 29 today.
Knowing what you know now, what advice would you give her?
Probably the same that I gave her, which is just be fully you. Being full of you is the best.
What advice do you wish you received at 10 years old?
I probably wish I had the same.
What is one thing you had to do that makes you uncomfortable, but if you didn't do it, you wouldn't have had this desired impact on your social initiative?
I absolutely love being a keynoter. It is still something that is scary every time for me. Um, it's absolutely vital for me to achieve my mission to keep getting even better at it.
Who is the greatest female influence in your life and why?
Again, I'm just gonna have to say my mom, and I'm sure lots of people have said that. I told you she was single mom, 3 jobs, and always knew where we were, and I always felt safe. And she went through a lot. She is to get where she's been, still with us, and there's no better shopping partner in the entire world.
What 3 values do you live by?
Kindness is really important. Warmth is really important. And that I would like to see a world where no one is left behind just because they're struggling with something.
Do you have a book that you could recommend that's in your field?
Yeah. I guess saying my own would be terrible, although it's excellent.
Oh, well, go ahead and say your own.
The latest one's called Wellness Well Played, and it includes some of this work we've been talking about today about interacting with your music in a very personal way, but also learning about the neuroscience around what it's actually doing in our bodies. So it goes into that. But that only came from reading books like This Is Your Brain on Music by Daniel Levitin. Anybody who has graduated from McGill in neuroscience and focused on neuroscience and music are writing incredible things. I recommend that. And I also want to give a shout out for my mentor who has passed. Her name is Fran Herman, and she wrote a great book called Accentuate the Positive.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Now, besides yours, you have several beneficiaries of your work and many that we talked about. But besides your beneficiaries, which beneficiary do you think needs the most investment of time, research, and money?
Grumpy men. I'm serious.
I know you are. It's definitely original.
I think if we could solve that problem, I was going to say grumpy and narcissistic because sometimes they can go together. But I feel if we could solve that, and I do believe music taps in, and I've seen it happen many times. Yeah, that whole thing of fueling a kinder, warmer, more creative world, it will happen.
Love it. Grumpy men. That will be our soundbite from this. Jennifer, where can people reach you or follow you? Of course, we have your page. And what I would suggest you do is send me a link to your book where they can
You
buy your
bet.
book as well, because you do have your bio and everything else on your page where this video will be as well.
Oh, that's great. It's really easiest to reach me on the contact form. I've got 2 websites. So I've got one, which is the bulk of our music therapy world and our services, and that's at jbmusictherapy.com. And then I've got personal videos where I'm going and speaking to the public and talking to them about how they can incorporate more music in their lives to reach their goals at jenniferbuchanan.ca.
Love it. Any final words, wisdom for our audience regarding making your contribution to society?
I do believe that before we share music with anybody else, it's really important that we dig a little deeper in ourselves. If you can take just a moment this week to have a real uniting moment with a piece of music you've been drawn to lately and give yourself a minute just to turn it on, not do anything else, allow it to wash over you, and then go out and just share that piece somehow, either through social media or to call somebody and just say, hey, I just listened to this song and it reminded me or made me think of this. So you can create a connection and then ask them, what's the song that you've been drawn to lately?
Love that answer. Do you have any words of wisdom for our audience regarding making a conscious contribution to society?
Give the best of yourself every day.
Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you for sharing your insight, inspiration, and your social impact. And I look forward to seeing the launch of your scholarship, because that's what I do too. Scholarships,
Right?
because they're a
I'm
great
really
way
excited about it.
Investing in education provides opportunity, which is why I'm a huge fan of providing opportunity.
Totally.
Scholarships are a great way, especially at the higher levels. So to discover more on the podcast and these impact leaders transforming where we live and work, please visit podcast.youmewe.ca. Please share and subscribe. And until next time, I'm Suzanne F. Stevens, and I encourage you to make your contribution count for you, me, we.